In a barracks in Germany a few years before the invasion of Ukraine, German soldiers are training in formation. But they're not holding rifles, they're holding broomsticks, because there weren't enough rifles in the armory. This is the army of the richest country in Europe, and as if that wasn't enough, in February 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, that same Germany made its first military offer to Kyiv. 5,000 helmets. The mayor of the Ukrainian capital publicly called it a joke. This was the sleeping giant of Europe. But today, 4 years later, something has changed. And the blame lies with a single man. The man who will regret this the most. Because Putin, when he invaded Ukraine in 2022, had a conviction. He thought he knew exactly how the West and Germany would react. Now, to understand what happened, you need to know how Germany hit rock bottom. After the end of the Cold War in 1991, Germany made a decision. It decided that the era of major wars was over, and it began to dismantle its own army year after year. Between 2007 and 2017, the richest country in Europe spent only 1.2% of all the wealth it produced in a year. For comparison, any NATO member country was required to spend at least 2%.
E o estrago foi aparecendo.
In 2018, the German Air Force had 128 Eurofighter jets.
Apenas 4 estavam operacionais.
Only 4 were operational. The other 124 were grounded. In early 2022, just a few days before the Russian invasion, the head of the German army, General Alfons Meis, published a statement that went around the world. He said that he was more or less empty-handed. Because for decades, Germany had bet that doing business with Russia would guarantee peace. Russian gas, contracts worth billions of euros, high-volume trade. But that bet ended in February 2022.
E 22.
And that's when the giant started to move. On February 24, 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. 3 days later, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz stood up in Parliament and announced an emergency fund of 100 billion euros for the army. At that very moment, without discussion, he called that moment a Zeitenwende. Which means a turning point in history. The word made global headlines. But what Scholz did was just the beginning, because 2 years later, a man named Friedrich Merz became chancellor. And Merz did what no German chancellor had dared to do in 80 years. He rewrote Germany's constitution. For decades, the German constitution had a rule called Schuldenbremse, the debt brake, which limited how much the government could spend, including the army. Merz convinced the parliament to remove military spending from that rule. In other words, he gave the German army unlimited money. And then Germany started spending. Let's start in the air, because that's where the change is most shocking. The German Air Force is retiring its Tornado fighter jets, old planes from the Cold War era, and buying F-35s. The F-35 is the most advanced fighter jet in the West. Invisible to most radars? But here comes the part that matters. Germany has participated in NATO's nuclear sharing since the 1960s, when it received the first American B-61 bombs. And the mission to carry these bombs belonged to the Tornado fighter jets, which are being retired. Starting in 2013, the F-35 takes over the role, meaning Germany is updating its nuclear arm with the most modern Western technology. A country that lost a world war 80 years ago now flies the most advanced planes on the planet, ready to enter nuclear combat if necessary. And there's more. Germany is developing, in partnership with other European countries, an unmanned fighter jet called the Airbus Wingman, piloted by artificial intelligence. In other words, the same country that in 2018 had only 4 fighter jets working will now have jets flying without a pilot. Now let's move to the ground. Germany is about to sign the biggest military contract in its history. The project is called Arminius. The name is a tribute to an ancient Germanic chief who defeated the Romans 2,000 years ago. The contract is worth 40 billion euros, and for that amount, Germany will buy up to 1,800 Boxer armored combat vehicles. 1,800. Just to give you an idea, the entire Brazilian army has about 400 tanks. Germany is buying more than 4 times that amount in armored vehicles in a single contract. And the most interesting part is who's producing them. The company is called Rheinmetall. For decades after World War II, no one in German society wanted to be seen doing business with them. Making weapons was seen as shameful. Today, Rheinmetall is worth more than Volkswagen on the stock market. Yes, you heard that right. A company that makes tanks is worth more than the largest car manufacturer in Germany. That's what happens when the mindset of an entire country changes. But a modern army needs more than tanks and planes. It needs range. And that's where Germany is closing an 80-year gap. Since the end of World War II, due to political choices and post-war restrictions, Germany has always depended on its allies for any attack on distant enemy territory. If it needed to hit something more than 500 kilometers away, it had to ask for permission. Now? Not anymore. Germany is buying 400 American Tomahawk missiles. The Tomahawks have a range of up to 2,000 kilometers. That means, fired from German territory, they can hit targets deep inside Russia, including major cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg. It's the long-range punch that Germany never had and is now being bought on a large scale. But here's the detail that proves this transformation is for real, and Russia already knows it. In July 2024, 2 years after Germany began its serious rearmament, American intelligence discovered an ongoing plan. A Russian plan to assassinate Armen Papager. Armen Papager is the president of Rheinmetall, the man who is producing the tanks and artillery shells that are sustaining Ukraine in the war. Papager was just one of several European defense leaders marked for death. American intelligence warned the German government, which increased protection. The plan was foiled. But the message from Russia was clear. Anyone who manufactures weapons used against Russia becomes a target. And it didn't stop there. In 2025 alone, German security services recorded 321 suspected cases of sabotage. Russian drones violated Polish airspace and forced the closure of airports across Europe. Submarine cables in the Baltic Sea are being cut by Russian ships pretending to be commercial vessels. Russia understood before the United States and Western European countries that German rearmament is real, and it is trying to sabotage, intimidate, and kill. But the train has already left the station. Now, equipment alone doesn't make an army. An army needs people. To give you an idea, the German army today has 182,000 soldiers. It's a small number for a country with 80 million inhabitants. Germany's goal is to reach almost 500,000 trained military personnel in the next decade, including active and reserve forces, and the numbers are heading in the right direction. In 2026, applications to join the German army increased by 20% compared to 2025. An entire generation of Germans who grew up never thinking about serving is now showing up at the recruiting office. The government is also putting back on the table an idea that had been buried in 2011: mandatory conscription. For 14 years, serving in the German army was optional. Now, if voluntary enlistment isn't enough, the country will make it mandatory. But the most symbolic move of all hasn't been this one yet. Look at the map of Europe. Go east. You'll find Lithuania, a small country. Really small, bordering Belarus, Russia's closest ally. In Lithuania, Germany has just stationed an entire brigade. The 45th Armored Brigade, 5,000 German soldiers, until 2027, just 150 kilometers from the border with Belarus. Here is the historical detail. This is the first German brigade permanently stationed outside German territory since 1945.
E 45.
Think about the weight of that. 80 years after World War II, German soldiers are back in Eastern Europe. But this time, not as invaders, but as defenders. It's an image that many older Europeans never imagined they would see. And no Russian expected it. The only question that remains is, with all this, will Germany be ready in time? In 2026, the German newspaper Die Welt, together with military analysts and former high-ranking officers, conducted a war simulation. A war game. The scenario was as follows. Russia invents a humanitarian crisis in Kaliningrad, a Russian territory surrounded by Lithuania and Poland. It then uses this as a pretext to send troops and invades a Lithuanian city. And do you know what the result of the simulation was? In just a few days, Russia took the city. Germany hesitated. NATO was too slow. Russia won. The German military took the results seriously. And General Carsten Breuer, the head of the German army, set an official deadline. By 2029, Germany needs to be ready for war, because by 2029, according to German intelligence, Russia will have rebuilt the army it lost in Ukraine and will be able to test NATO. 4 years is all Germany has. Remember how we started this video? German soldiers training with broomsticks, 5,000 helmets offered as military aid, the mayor of Kiev calling it a joke. In 2022, that was Germany. In 2029, the German military budget will be larger than that of France and the United Kingdom combined. 7 years. Same country. Another scale. And now, remember at the beginning of the video when we talked about Putin believing he knew exactly how the West and Germany would react to the invasion of Ukraine? So you know the answer. He couldn't have been more wrong. The German beast is being unleashed, and Putin was the one who cut the chains. Putin thought that by invading Ukraine, he would weaken the West, and he believed that a divided Europe with a pacifist Germany dependent on Russian gas wouldn't know how to react. He calculated that time would be on his side. He miscalculated. The man who wanted a submissive Europe will now have to face a Germany armed to the teeth with 5th-generation fighter jets, thousands of tanks, missiles capable of reaching Moscow, and permanent troops on the border with Belarus. He helped build all of this himself, unintentionally.
Geração, tanques aos milhares, mísseis capazes de atingir Moscou e tropas permanentes na fronteira da Bielorrússia. Tudo isso ele mesmo ajudou a construir, sem que...
And now it's too late to undo it. Now, I want to know your opinion. Who will get there first in 2029? A Germany ready to protect Europe or a Russia ready to attack it? Leave your prediction in the comments. If this video made you think, share it with someone who is also interested in geopolitics, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming analyses. See you next time.